I'd like to call the meeting of the Board of Adjustment for the City of Morganton. My name is Thomas Ure, and I have the privilege of serving this community as the chair of the Board of Adjustment. To my immediate right is Dale Britton, and to my immediate left is Susan Shelor. Bracketed on both ends are new members of our board tonight, and I'd like to take a moment to introduce them. Gene Kirby is to my far right, and to my far left is your right, Joe Irvin. Again, I want to welcome everyone that's present in the auditorium tonight as well as online to your Board of Adjustment meeting for the City of Morganton. Tonight, I would ask you to please silence your phones so that there's no distractions to anyone in the audience or certainly to the applicant that we're going to hear tonight. I would next like to proceed consistent with our agenda to approval of last time we met's meeting minutes from May. Those have been distributed to members of the board, and at the time you feel comfortable, I would ask for a motion for approval of our meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion's been made for approval. I hear a second to that approval from Ms. Shelor. Any further discussion on the minutes? Hearing no issues with the minutes, I would now call the question. All in favor of the minutes being approved as written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The minutes are approved, Madam Clerk. Tonight we're going to hear one case. Case is case number 03-25, which is an application for a variance from section 4.2.4 of the non-residential dimensional standards of the City of Morganton's zoning ordinance. It's an expansion or a proposed expansion of front setback restrictions from 5 feet, maximum 0 to 5 feet, to 21 feet to 35 feet along North Green Street frontage. The applicant before us is Zachary Sabinka, RLA, on behalf of Morganton Savings Bank. The application for a variance shall be decided by a 4/5 vote of this board tonight. I want to repeat that. The variance must be approved by a 4/5 vote of this board tonight. Given the restrictions that are placed upon this board by statute in North Carolina, I always believe it's appropriate, particularly for the applicant, to hear directly what your state statute has to say about the proceedings tonight. In order for a variance to be approved by this board tonight, you must show that there is an unnecessary hardship that would result from the strict application of the zoning regulation. It's not necessary for you to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. Number two, the hardship that you are suggesting results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Hardships resulting from personal circumstances as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or the general public, this is important, may not be the basis for granting a variance. Number three, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting of a variance is not a self-creating hardship. And then finally, this board must find tonight by a 4/5 vote minimum, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the regulation such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Before we begin tonight, it's important for everyone to understand some important facts related to this meeting. This Board of Adjustment meeting is known as a quasi-judicial proceeding, which means it functions much like a court proceeding in which one individual's rights are determined. Testimony will be limited to only those issues concerning whether the application should be approved. The legal purpose of this quasi-judicial hearing is not to gather public opinions. It's real important for the applicant and those in the audience to understand this principle, and suggestions as to policies to be applied. The policy has already been determined as set forth in the City of Morganton zoning ordinance. This board, making the decision tonight, must apply those existing policies and ordinances to a specific application. The purpose of the evidentiary hearing tonight is to gather legally sufficient factual evidence to apply those standards to the application based upon competent material and substantial evidence in the record. At this time, as the chair, I would ask the members of the board tonight whether any members of the board who feel they cannot sit as an impartial decision maker in today's proceeding due to a conflict of interest. I'll turn to you, sir. Are there any issues with conflict of interest?
I have no conflict of interest.
Mr. Britton?
No, sir.
Ms. Shelor? And to you, Mr. Urban?
No, sir.
All right. In the chair's opinion, we can proceed with no conflicts of interest from the board. The order of business for this hearing will be for the case as follows. Firstly, the city's official overseeing the Morganton Development and Design Services will provide an overview of the application. At that time, board members, you will have an opportunity to ask the witness any questions that you deem appropriate. Secondly, we'll then hear from the applicant, who will present evidence in support of the request and answer any questions from members of the board. Other than the City of Morganton and the applicant, is there anyone else in the room who feels that they would like to be able to testify tonight before the board? If so, please raise your right hand. For the record, the chair doesn't see anyone other than the applicant or the city representative. At this time, I would ask the two of you, if you wouldn't mind, to come up and please be sworn. If you'll place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand if you're comfortable doing that. Otherwise, you can certainly affirm. The chair notices that both potential witnesses have their left hand on the Bible and have raised their right hand. Do both of you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. In the chair's opinion, both have taken the oath appropriately. And so all persons who speak or participate will, of course, having been placed under oath, can provide written evidence such as reports and maps or exhibits to this board. And we would ask you to limit your comments solely to the relevant information for the application. I now open the public hearing regarding the application and ask for testimony from the City of Morganton's official overseeing the Development and Design Services. Ma'am, if you'd please state your full name and your capacity with the City of Morganton for the record.
Wendy Smith, Director, Development and Design Services.
Ms. Smith will now hear your evidence.
So the property, Chad, if you could bring up the location map, is the one that is highlighted vaguely in yellow there on the corner of Patterson and North Green and Bouchelle Streets. The property is a 1.42 acre lot. It's currently the site of the former SunTrust Bank, and the site is now owned by Morganton Savings Bank. It's proposed to be the site of their new facility after demolition of this aging structure on the site. As said, the site's bordered on three sides by streets. The western boundary is with a laundromat and a single-family house. And all of the parcels here, actually all that you can see on the map, are in zone CBD. which is our central business district. So the applicant is proposing to develop the site with a new commercial bank building and associated drive-through and parking. The new building will be built adjacent to North Green Street and Patterson Street with that parking in the rear of the site. And there is land directly available, adjacent to Bouchelle Street that's proposed to remain undeveloped at this time. I'll show you a map of that. And actually, go to the next map, Chad. So you can kind of see the layout there. The front setback of the property boundary for a structure in zone CBD is 0 feet minimum, which is no setback buildings against the sidewalk, and a maximum of 5 feet. The bank is proposing to place the building, Chad, go to the next image. I don't have a little arrow, but the corner of the building closest to the sidewalk where you see the blue and the pink lines getting close together is at 21 feet. And then the middle corner of the building is at 35 feet. The frontage adjacent to Patterson Street is adjacent to the sidewalk, as it's supposed to be with the setbacks. And then the land on Bouchelle Street is not proposed to be built on at this point, but is proposed to be left in a state such that it could be built on at a later point in time. So the proposal is for that setback increase from the 5 feet to the 21 to 35 feet, kind of judging across there where the building corners go. So it's just for that small section of that North Green Street frontage, not for the whole property boundary. The zoning ordinance states that it's the intent of the Central Business District zone to provide a concentration of activities in a pedestrian setting, and the purpose in locating buildings close to the street and the sidewalk is a longstanding planning practice to encourage pedestrian interest and interaction with storefronts along that street. For conditions peculiar to this specific property, the property is, as I said, at 1.42 acres. It's one of the largest single parcels in the CBD. There's 448 lots, and only less than 10% of those are even over 1 acre in size. For comparison, the median lot size in the CBD is 0.18 acres. So I didn't do the math on how big that is, but it's many times larger than that. The subject property is one of only 15 lots in the whole CBD that have frontages to 3 separate streets and would theoretically be required to bring buildings to all 3 of those streets. Of those 15 sites, there are only 8 that are commercial sites. The others are larger community uses like our 2 courthouse sites, the Comma building, and there are 2 church sites that have been there for a really long time that don't have buildings up to the street there, but still have those 3 street frontages. So rather unusual property out of the 448 to have 15 of them with those 3 street frontages. This lot has 1,609 feet of street frontage. The area, and as we mentioned, the area of setback reduction is only for a small portion of that along North Green Street. Chad, if you could bring the big map up again. So the pink stripe that you see along North Green Street, and I know you guys have it in your package and in front of you, might be easier to see on the big screen up above. The city has requested a 5-foot sidewalk extension in that area, which would bring our pathway along North Green Street to a total of 10 feet wide, because that is a continuation of the Fonta Flora State Trail that already extends along North Green Street at the next block down. So as these properties are redeveloping, we're asking for that additional land to be able to continue that trail. The Fonta Flora State Trail is a connection to be provided from Morganton, from downtown Morganton to Asheville. So this sidewalk will extend into that property 5 feet. On then that north side, after that sidewalk extension, there exists an underground stormwater drainage line. That's the blue lines that you see on the map. The city will not allow, and it's poor engineering design, to have a structure built over a stormwater drainage line, because if that fails, then the structure may fall as well, and we also can't get in there to work on it. That's not typical that they go through properties. It's much more typical that that stormwater drainage line and all utilities, as far as possible, are located within your street right-of-way. So it's unusual that this has that kind of curving stormwater drainage line through the property there, that close to the street. There is a required 10-foot drainage easement around that stormwater drainage line, and that brings it up to just close to that 21-foot corner there, and the applicant's proposing to just slightly offset that building foundation, I think it's 2 or 3 feet, to ensure there's stability there, and if we do need to get in and work on that stormwater drainage line, it's not undermining the building. There are also topographic constraints to the property. You can see that on this top left image on the screen at the moment, and also on the image that's in your package, that there's a 13.5-foot elevation change across the property. To achieve a flat site on there need to be extensive excavation or fill to bring the building down closer to that North Green Street elevation. Then would also result in some stormwater drainage concerns for the property and how that works. I'll let the applicant explain that a little bit more for you. So for the building to accommodate that stormwater drainage and your topographic concerns, then that front corner at North Green Street and Patterson Street needs to be elevated somewhat, as you can again see in the image you have of the existing facility that's there, where that same design has been necessarily used. In addition to all of that, the city requires an ADA connection into the building from the public sidewalk. Typically, that's just kind of a flat space that is maybe a very slight ramp in there, but typically you don't have that elevation change that we've just talked about. So in order to achieve that ADA access at the most limited amount possible for an applicant, most people are probably going to be coming from the east or the south to this property, because that's where the heavy concentration of downtown is. And then the lobby of the building will be on that corner. So the applicant has chosen to curve that ADA path up through the site, utilizing a good chunk of that stormwater drainage area that they already can't put a building on, but they can put this pathway on, and curve it up to the front, which then necessitates the other setback in order to make sure that persons with disabilities can easily access the building without having to walk all the way around the site to get into the building, or a really long way down and turn around to come back up. For example, we had originally looked with the applicant at a path along Patterson Street, but then that would have necessitated both moving the building away from Patterson Street, as well as, again, the majority of the traffic having to walk all the way down Patterson Street and then all the way back up the ramp to be able to access the frontage of the building. These circumstances are not considered to be resulting from the personal circumstances or actions taken by the applicant. They're what this property is. The applicant didn't put this property together in any format. It's been there in that site for a number of years. The topographic constraints, the amount of street frontage, the stormwater drainage lines, all of those features are parts of the site that have been there for a long time and are not particularly common to the neighborhood or the general public in that area. We only have this trail running along one street in the city. Again, unusual to have stormwater drainage lines in there and unusual topographic changes there. The majority of downtown is relatively flat, but there are a couple of portions that angle up a little bit there. The staff's position is that the requested variance consistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance, because it's bringing the building as close to the street as it can, while also importantly making sure that the applicants, particularly our disabled applicants, that the individuals, the residents, particularly our disabled residents, are able to easily access the building and ensure it's safe and have that substantial justice for those members of the community and the local users.
Ms. Smith, does that complete your testimony?
Yes, sir.
At this point in time, I would ask the board to proceed with asking any questions that you would like to ask of the witness, Ms. Smith. I'll start with you, Mr. Kirby. Any questions?
I have no questions.
All right. Mr. Britton, I'll turn to you. Any questions for the witness?
No.
All right. And Ms. Shelor, any questions you would like to ask the witness? And Mr. Irvin, any questions you would like to ask the witness?
I'd like to ask a question. How many times have you met with the
the party wanting to discuss this?
Numbers of times, I probably half a dozen or so to make sure they understood what the zoning ordinance rules are, make sure that they understood what the city's requirements were in relation to the pathways and understanding what they could and could not do with the stormwater drainage on the site. So a number of times to make sure that they were aware of those pieces and try to get the best design possible for the site.
No further questions.
Thank you, sir. The chair does have a question or maybe two for the witness. Ms. Smith, as you know, our focus tonight for the board is fairly narrow in terms of unnecessary hardship vis-a-vis the zoning ordinance. In your testimony, you described particularly looking at an option or an idea of the Patterson Street and came to the conclusion that that was not viable. Did I understand your testimony to be correct?
It would not be as viable an option for the persons with disability, and it also then created additional issues that we would need to ask for variances for.
And with regard to this application that's before us tonight, did I understand your testimony to be correct that we're talking about a narrow area with regard to the approach to North Green Street?
Yes, the proposed building would be asked to be accepted as it's laid out on the screen, if you can go back, Chad. There, again, the Patterson Street frontage where there is building, obviously setbacks don't apply where there's not building.
Right.
Chad, can you zoom in on that at all? Don't know if that's possible or not. You guys do have a copy of it in your
Yeah,
package.
I've got it right here.
So it doesn't apply to the portions of the site where there aren't buildings, so where there are driveway access and stuff, but it does line Patterson Street and then is just looking to adjust the elements on North Green Street where you have those other features, the sidewalk and the drainage and the ADA pathway. And again, it leaves the area specifically along Bouchelle Street and so forth to be able to be developed potentially with other buildings in the future.
So, Ms. Smith, my last question is just to help me better understand. Is it your testimony that given the grading issues, the stormwater drainage issues, the ADA compliance issue, and how the property faces the street, that the really only practicable solution is the one proffered by the applicant tonight in order to be able to work within the parameters of what's being asked for?
Yes, we think that meets the zoning ordinance as much as possible given the constraints presented.
I suppose I should also, lastly, I know I told you it was my last question, but given the fact that you're here, on behalf of the city, do you have a view with regard to public safety being secured and substantial justice being achieved vis-a-vis a variance being approved by this board?
I think that public safety is secured given that we're not building on top of the stormwater drain and risking danger to those that might be in the building or near the building if any of that collapsed, if we did build over that. And then substantial justice is largely achieved by making sure that we have that ADA pathway into the building and not forcing those more disadvantaged portions of the residential population having to walk potentially all the way around the building or in their wheelchair, et cetera, to be able to access the site and going in some sort of back side entrance instead of being able to access the lobby of the building as would any other individual.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any of the board members have any follow-up questions related to anything I asked or Mr. Irvin asked?
No.
All right, hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Smith. You can stand down, and I'd ask the applicant if you'd please approach at this time. Sir, if you'll please state your full name for the record and your capacity in testifying here tonight, your role, in other words.
Sure, thank you. First, I just want to thank you for your time. My name is Zachary Allen Sabenka. I'm a registered landscape architect, and I'm managing the site design of this project.
Well, welcome, Mr. Sabenko, and thank you for being here tonight. And, sir, please proceed with sharing with us the testimony you would like this board to consider related to your application.
Absolutely. Wendy hit on all of our points very well, and I just wanted to reiterate that we are seeking a setback variance for this somewhat challenging site due to 4 primary factors, which she outlined. The first one is we have 3 street frontages for this parcel, and that equals 65% of the site. So it's a challenge to meet all those requirements. The existing topography and site features make meeting the requirements a challenge. There is a 13-foot, 6-inch drop from the top of the site on the north corner to the southeast corner at the low point. As such, buildings are not typically placed at the low point of a site. This was all too apparent during the storm last year. And you want water to flow away from the building and away from its foundation. So typically, you want to find a place in the middle of the site where it's a little bit raised from the low point, but not quite at the high point where water can then flow around. We have a site plan with a bunch of blue arrows that indicate the water flowing away from the building and then eventually getting collected through pipes and inlets and then going through that southern corridor to the southeast corner. That's the existing stormwater inlet that then ties into the stormwater system of the city. So that's the only place that we can direct the water to. And then, so yeah, it would cause drainage issues if it was at the low point, and we would have to massively move existing site features to have that building be down at the corner and excavate the rest of the site to match the parking to be lower, and that ties also into the ADA access. You would have to have, it would be a lot more of a challenge to get that to work. So just touched on the stormwater management. The southern corridor is needed for stormwater management pipes, ties into that network. And that's how it is existing, and that's how we're proposing it. It's the only inlet available on site. And then the fourth point was the ADA access. We are providing both the required ADA access at the front and the rear of the building, using that stormwater corridor, as we cannot build any structures on top of that corridor. Structures defined as walls or buildings, you can put a sidewalk over top of it, but nothing load-bearing in that way. So we have that ADA path that winds down from the building to the sidewalk, and the ADA access is also provided for customers parking in the rear of the building using the accessible path from that ADA parking. It is our opinion that this is the best way to lay this site out. I have worked in Asheville for the last 9 years, so I know how much of a challenge it is to work with the topography and also with inclusivity using ADA standards. So we recommend this site plan, and that is my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Sabenka. At this point in time, I'd ask our board to engage in any questions you have for the witness, and I'll turn to you, Mr. Kirby. Any questions?
Have no question.
Mr. Britton, you're next.
Nope.
Ms. Shelor? And Mr. Irvin, any questions?
Have you ever had a site like this where you've had to run into public waterways of drainage systems that the city or county that has provided?
To tie back into the
I
stormwater.
don't know, like having one so close to a building. Have you ever, has your company or yourself dealt with the pipes or drainage systems being so close to a foundation?
No, this one is maybe one of the closest ones. I should have mentioned too that typically when you have a foundation, there's an area called, I think the area of influence, my civil engineer taught me about, is if you have, say, the building and then you have the footing of the building, you have the compacted earth, and the area of influence is a 1-to-1 slope going down that. So you can't have any pipes or anything that would undermine that footing. So I showed that with the orange overlay on the site plan, kind of the width of the footings, and then kind of that 5-foot offset with that slope kind of represented going down. So the pipes are away from that, and we're trying our best to get that water away from the foundation.
Yeah, I have no further questions.
So the chair has some questions for you, sir. And Mr. Sabenka, again, thank you for being here tonight. As you heard in the opening, the one of the key ingredients of the issue we've got to decide tonight is whether or not you're presented with an unnecessary hardship. And I want to read for you, I think, the dispositive language from the first section of what we have to decide tonight. It's not necessary for you to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. But I want to ask you, you said that in your testimony that the proposal before us tonight, to use your words, was the best way to develop or lay this site out. Best way to lay this site out is what you said. I understand that you met on several occasions with the city officials to look at the property. Given all the issues that we've heard tonight in evidence with regard to the topographical problems as well as the stormwater drainage, the ADA compliance issues, and the manner within which the property is facing the street, is there really any other practicable way of developing the property that would be financially feasible for the applicant? Is there another practicable way that would be feasible in order to develop the site in compliance with the current zoning ordinance of the city of Morganton?
Financially speaking, my opinion is no.
And sir, did I understand correctly that with regard to your application for a variance, you're talking about this being relative to a narrow portion of the 300 block of North Green Street?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions. I would turn back to my board and see if y'all have any questions related to anything I asked.
No question.
All right. Thank you, sir. You can take a seat.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your presentation. Before I move the board to deliberations, any other comments to be made before the board? In the chair's opinion, hearing none, Madam Clerk, I'll proceed to deliberations. And at this point in time, I would ask for members of the board to please share, before we vote, to share any comments you have related to the application, its attributes and your concerns you may have. I'll turn first to you, Mr. Kirby, for any comments you may have.
I don't seem to have any concerns, but I would like to say that this seems to be a wonderful design, and it will be good for the city of Morgan. I think it will add to the city, so it's very beautiful.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Mr. Britton, I'll turn to you next. Any comments?
No, I don't have any comments.
All right. Ms. Shelor, I'll turn to you. Any comments you'd like to make for the board with regard to this application?
Not really.
All right. Mr. Irvin?
No, sir.
In the chair's view, I would just like to mention that we take our role very seriously as a board of land use adjustment for the city of Morganton. Getting a variance from the city's zoning ordinance is a big deal, and we take that very seriously. We look at particularly that undue hardship issue very myopically on purpose. I've become convinced tonight that the property is such that it has peculiarity. It has 3 street frontages. It's a very large lot. My goodness, a total of 1,609 linear feet that fronts, in fact, 65% of the property borders a street, as we heard tonight. Right, and so the topography, as we heard tonight in evidence, has a real challenge with regard to the setback restrictions in the zoning ordinance. Indeed, what I heard tonight from the witness stand is that there's a 13.6 feet elevation change from the high point to the low point of the property. And then the other thing I heard tonight from the witness stand, members of the board, is that we have this, of course, stormwater issue of trying to be able to not build over top of that, and the problems that would cause in the event that the city engineering folks needed to get into the stormwater pipes that would be a tremendous problem. And then, in order to avail this property to have access for folks with disabilities and be ADA compliant, that would necessary to construct the building in such a way that it's going to necessitate a variance in order to avail the ADA compliance issue, and therefore I'm supportive of the variance as well. At this point in time, I would call for a motion with regard to the application that has been presented to us tonight. Is there a motion?
I make a motion
And sir, what is your motion?
to accept it as outlined.
Is that to approve the variance?
Yes.
The chair has received a motion to approve the variance. Is there a second to the motion?
I will second that motion.
All right. And with regard to discussion, and with regard to the motion, the board would be finding that there is an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, that the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, that the hardship is not a result of anything that the applicant has done, and that the requested variance, consistent with the evidence received tonight, is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of public safety, and would secure substantial justice for our community. Any further discussion before we vote? Given the fact that we're required by statute to have a 4/5 at minimum vote, I'm going to ask for each member to cast your vote in favor of the motion or against the motion. I'll turn to you, Mr. Kirby, and ask for your vote at this time.
In favor.
Mr. Kirby votes yea. Mr. Britton, I'll ask for your vote.
I'll vote yea.
Mr. Britton votes yea. Ms. Shelor, I ask for your vote.
Yay.
Ms. Shelor votes yea. Mr. Irvin.
Yay.
Mr. Irvin votes yea. The chair will join the members of the board in a unanimous decision to vote to approve the variance as presented in the application. Members of the board, any other business for us to attend to tonight? Having heard none, this session of the City of Morganton's Board of Land Use Adjustment is adjourned.